You've got your fried mozzarella, your chicken parmigiana, and your ravioli carbonara. It's time to choose a side. Smash the hell out of some breadsticks or go for that bottomless house salad. Can't decide? Don't worry, we tried everything Olive Garden has to offer. To the benefit of picky eaters of all ages, Olive Garden offers French fries as a side by way of the kids menu. They typically come as a side option for the kids' pizza, but we found out you can get a side order to go with adult dishes as well. Unfortunately, Olive Garden's French fries missed the mark in terms of flavor and texture. When we tested these fries, they were not quite crispy enough to deliver that perfect crackle. That's not to say that they were soggy either, but if you want a nice crispy fry, you may have to order them to your preference. Don't worry though.
When you're here, you're family.
The fries come with ketchup and have a nice coarse grind of salt on top, and the portion size is decent. But in the end, there are simply better options for the diner with a refined palate. Next time, we're leaving this one on the kids' menu. Yes, you can order a side of broccoli at Olive Garden. No, we don't blame you if you didn't already know that. Broccoli doesn't go particularly well with much of Olive Garden's menu, but this broccoli side is a fairly tasty way to add vitamins, minerals, and fiber to an otherwise indulgent Italian feast. Olive Garden serves its broccoli steamed, lightly salted, and complemented with a bit of garlic and Parmesan cheese. All of the florets are sized to be eaten in 1 or 2 bites, and the portion is reasonably sized. The fact that this dish doesn't come close to the salt level of other dishes makes us think that this exists to appease health-conscious diners. Although we'd happily eat broccoli cooked at Olive Garden again if the desire arose, this dish scores lower than most simply because it is blandly seasoned and therefore a little boring to eat by itself. Speaking of foods that feel a little odd to eat by themselves, Olive Garden's side of meatballs feels a little bit plain. These 3 large meatballs are the same kind you would get from the spaghetti and meatballs entree, minus any noodles or sauce. The texture of the meat is more of a puree than grind, making it uniformly soft and easy to eat with a fork and knife. The natural savory notes of the beef stand out through the light seasoning, but these baked hunks of meat are begging for something more.
So dry.
As good as they are, we would much rather order these as an add-on to a sufficiently saucy main dish than as a discrete side dish. Even if you eventually dump them over some pasta, you'll negatively affect the sauce to protein to noodle ratio. And we wouldn't recommend eating them by themselves either. They are far from bite-size, and chomping into a huge ball of plain meat just isn't as appealing as ordering the meatballs Parmigiana appetizer or simply eating another breadstick. Of all the dedicated side dishes that Olive Garden offers, its grilled chicken is easily the most flavorful. This side portion is roughly the same amount that Olive Garden adds to its Chicken Alfredo, one of its classic entrees. And if you've had that dish, then you know how well the crispy, well-seasoned chicken brings everything together. As it turns out, Olive Garden's grilled chicken is good enough to eat on its own as a side, too. It is well seasoned with a blend of Italian herbs, which has a more robust spice than the meatballs have. Each chicken strip has a crispy golden exterior that is almost like breading. The chicken is juicy when you cut into it, and it has a firm yet yielding texture. The amount the restaurant gives you is decent for the price, too. Sure, it generally tastes better as an add-on to an existing pasta dish, but Olive Garden's grilled chicken is surprisingly satisfying on its own. Not all soups are created equally, and the chicken and gnocchi soup is probably the weakest of Olive Garden's lot. It is one of the 2 creamy soups in Olive Garden's lineup, and its core ingredients are roasted chicken, traditional Italian dumplings, and spinach. The bite-sized chicken pieces are tender and flavorful, the gnocchi is nice and pillowy, and the spinach adds a mild earthiness to the flavor profile. The soup has julienned carrots for no apparent reason, which is a recurring theme among Olive Garden soups. The biggest shortcoming of this soup, though, is that its broth doesn't feel creamy enough to get that true depth of flavor. The chicken and gnocchi's soup's broth doesn't feel thick enough to contrast against all of the delicious chunky soups on the menu. It does have a nice rich flavor, but the viscosity is weirdly close to that of the other soups without having the same hearty chunkiness. All this said, opinions tend to vary wildly on this issue. In fact, the chicken and gnocchi soup was the most popular soup at the restaurant, based on a mashed reader survey. We find it appropriate that the spaghetti with marinara sits squarely in the middle when ranking all of the best side dishes at Olive Garden. As a longtime staple of the chain, it is a fitting standard against which we can compare the quality of other Olive Garden offerings. But you may be wondering, does it count as a side? The spaghetti with marinara is technically both a side and an entree, as it can be served accompanying other mains like the chicken parmigiana and eggplant parmigiana, or served in a large portion as a main course.
So much pasta. No olives, though. Weird.
The dish's flavors are fairly simple, by design, but they are still delicious enough to stand independently. The most noticeable thing about Olive Garden's spaghetti with marinara is that the noodles are perfectly cooked. They have just the right amount of al dente firmness to be chewy and slurpable. The marinara sauce has strong, savory notes of tomato with herbaceous Italian seasonings. It has the right amount of chunkiness, too, such that it still easily coats a forkful of noodles. Still, the recipe is somewhat plain compared to some of the other side offerings. As delicious as Olive Garden's spaghetti with marinara is, there are still better options to help fill your belly. You may know the pasta e fagioli soup as one of Olive Garden's most challenging menu items to pronounce, but you may also know it is a pretty solid soup offering. Its name translates to pasta and beans. Its core flavors are white and red beans, ground beef, fresh tomatoes, and tubetti pasta in a savory broth. And like all food at Olive Garden, it is best served with a small mountain of shredded cheese on top.
Favorite Italian phrase, cheese it up.
Between the ingredients list and the beef broth base, pasta e fagioli brings the heartiness and robust flavors of homemade chili, only with Italian ingredients and seasoning. The rich and hearty tomato broth warms the soul, especially when Olive Garden has the air conditioning cranked up way too high. Don't worry, the soups are typically served steaming hot. But while the flavors are generally well-balanced, you'll get way more beans and noodles per spoonful than ground beef or carrots. The meat is ground to mince, consequently taking the back seat in this dish. And once again, we have julienne carrots that just kind of feel out of place. As is, the pasta e fagioli soup is a respectably tasty side option. But there are still other soups we like better. The Minestrone soup is not only a delicious side option in general, but also one of only 2 Olive Garden sides that are vegan by default. It is a chunky soup made with fresh vegetables, beans, and shell pasta in a light tomato broth. The flavor profile of the minestrone soup is comparable to that of the pasta e fagioli soup, but its chunkier texture gives it a slight edge in our rankings. Each bite feels hearty and satisfying, with large pieces of onion, celery, green beans, and zucchini mixed throughout. Some other reviewers have actually criticized the minestrone soup for being too chunky, though. So whether or not this is a good thing is purely a matter of personal preference. Once again, the julienne carrots feel slightly out of place, but they still add flavor to the soup. The tomato base is the thinnest among Olive Garden's soup offerings, but the added seasonings make it feel just as rich as the creamy base of the chicken and gnocchi soup. While this is a soup we will certainly order again, it still falls short of our personal favorite soup offering from Olive Garden. One could make a compelling argument that any of Olive Garden's homemade soups are the best of the bunch, but in all likelihood, it's probably the Zuppa Toscana. This soup combines chunky pieces of spicy Italian sausage, fresh kale, and russet potatoes with a creamy broth to check all of the boxes when it comes to balance. While its ingredients aren't quite as chunky as those of the minestrone soup, nor is its broth as creamy as the chicken and gnocchi soup, something magical happens in the middle ground. You get a great variety of textures from the tender sausage, soft kale, and pillowy potatoes, and the rich, creamy broth ties it all together. Some folks may be off-put by the mild spice of the Italian sausage or the heavy dairy content of the broth, but both only had us wanting more. Even with a name as ostentatious as our famous house salad, a simple side salad probably doesn't sound very exciting on paper. But rest assured, Olive Garden's famous house salad is an absolutely delicious side dish that should not be skipped. One large salad comes complimentary with every entree, or you can order bottomless amounts via the restaurant's unlimited soup and salad deal, and we wouldn't fault you for doing so. Our famous house salad includes tomato, olives, onions, pepperoncini, and croutons served over a bed of garden greens with red cabbage and carrots. However, the real kicker with this dish is Olive Garden's signature Italian dressing. It brings a zesty and herbaceous flavor to the dish, making it just as craveable as some of the chain's less healthy options. The fact that Olive Garden has used the same dressing recipe for over 35 years is yet another testament to its quality. However, if you prefer, you can also opt for a low-fat version of the Italian dressing, or a simpler oil and vinegar dressing. No matter which option you go with, our famous house salad from Olive Garden is undeniably delicious. Much like the spaghetti with marinara, Olive Garden's Fettuccine Alfredo also pulls double duty as a side dish and an entree. You can order it by itself for a meal-sized portion, but it also comes as a side portion when you order the 6-ounce sirloin. Unfortunately, there is no amount that Olive Garden can serve on one plate without us wanting more. With this dish, Olive Garden once again proves that its cooks know how to prepare pasta to perfection. The fettuccine noodles are served perfectly al dente, with the just right amount of firmness. The Alfredo sauce transforms simple ingredients like Parmesan, cream, garlic, and butter into the perfect Italian comfort food. Considering that Olive Garden has an entire section of its menu dedicated to different Alfredo dishes, it is safe to assume that the recipe for its staple sauce is absolutely dialed in. It's rich and flavorful with buttery warmth and a hint of dairy sweetness. It would take an absolute behemoth of a menu item to keep it from earning the #1 slot among Olive Garden sides. No other Olive Garden side could possibly claim the top side slot other than the chain's iconic breadsticks, given their outrageous popularity and universal appeal. And it's not just because they are complimentary with every meal. It's because they are downright delicious. These breadsticks are seasoned with a simple mix of garlic, salt, and a soy-based butter substitute. Surprisingly, this makes them as vegan-friendly as the minestrone soup. The copious amount of seasoning makes them delicious to eat by themselves, or dipped into a soup or pasta sauce. If you want to elevate your breadsticks even further, you can pair them with 1 or 2 of Olive Garden's dipping sauces. These include a marinara dip, a homemade Alfredo dip, and a 5-cheese marinara dip.
Can we have the butter with the breadsticks, like a load of butter?
It might feel like a cop-out to give the crown up to bread with garlic and salt, but there can be no other winner. After all, no food item on the entire Olive Garden menu is quite as emblematic of the restaurant's culture. That steaming basket of breadsticks brought to you as you sit down is a contract of hospitality. It promises that even the most destitute diner won't leave hungry. True to the chain's motto, you will be treated like family in this garden.